Hello. In the last video, we installed the Edge agent and talked a little bit about Docker and overall how the Edge agent works. In this video, we are actually going to use it. First things first, how can we tell if the agent is actually running? Well, if you look at the device page, you can see the little icon letting you know the device is connected. Also, once your Edge agent starts doing stuff, you'll be able to see things appear in the device logs. That's a good indicator that things are going well. If you have access to the device, we can communicate with the agent directly and look at the logs. There, we will see a successful connection message. So, we got an Edge device that's connected and ready to run some workflows. Let's make that happen. We can select Create Workflow from the Workflows menu. We can name our workflow anything. We need to choose Edge as the workflow type. Once you choose Edge, you'll see a new dropdown called Minimum Agent Version. This setting is really important. As we make changes and improve the Edge agent, the changes are always backwards compatible, but not forwards. Let me explain. Let's say you have version 1.0 of the Edge agent installed on your device, but we released a new version called 1.1.0 that contains a new Edge node. If you create an Edge workflow with the minimum version being 1.1.0, you won't be able to deploy it to your device because you haven't upgraded yet. And this is because your device is running 1.0. The new workflow won't support the device version. The new functionality in the Edge agent isn't available on older versions. So, before you create the workflow, make sure the minimum version is correct based on your device. If you are unsure of what version is running on your device, you can always go to the device Edge compute settings and it will be right there for you. Also, if you ever need to know what is the difference between each version, remember the changelog of the Edge agent has all the details there for you. Now, let's build a simple Edge workflow. I'm going to add a timer node and a debug node to this workflow. The very first thing you may notice if you've been working in application workflows is that there are not as many trigger nodes in this workflow palette. This is because Edge workflows run in a different environment than application workflows. Since the Edge workflows run directly on an Edge device or a gateway, some of the other triggers that are normally in an application workflow just don't make any sense. For example, the device state trigger. Because we can make the assumption that an Edge device may not always be connected, it can't always listen for device state. Thus, there is no need for that trigger on the Edge. Trigger nodes aren't the only nodes that are different. If you see a node missing, check the docs. There you can always see the workflow support for a node. Some nodes do facilitate external connections, for example, the BigQuery data node or the Twitter output node. However, keep in mind that if you don't have an internet connection, they will fail. Some nodes will also save data offline. In particular, the device state node and the MQTT node. When you use these nodes as an output node and the Edge agent is not connected, the agent will save these to eventually send to the cloud when connection is restored. Upon restoration of a connection, all the data will play back to the cloud with proper information and timestamps. Pro tip: if you do not wish to play back data in this way, you can always turn this feature off in the Edge agent settings. Okay, now that we know more about Edge workflows, we can save this workflow and deploy this to our Edge agent. Once you select deploy, the very first thing you have to do is create a version. Every Edge workflow you deploy will be versioned. It allows you to always be able to restore older versions if something goes wrong. Then you can select the device or devices you would like to deploy to. This is our handy dandy device picker, so we can choose one device or devices by tag. With this, we can deploy to one, hundreds, or even thousands of devices at once. Now let's click deploy. To be honest, if your device is connected, it will most likely deploy immediately. However, if the device is not connected, it will obviously not. But we can always check on the status of the deployment in the deployment tab in the workflow settings. If we look there, we can see all the Edge devices and the version and status of this workflow that's deployed. If you see a check mark, that means it has successfully deployed the last version you told it to deploy. What's cool is that if we click on the settings icon of a device here, we can change the version of the workflow that's running on the device from this dialog, or even remove it from the device entirely. One thing to keep in mind is that you can only deploy one version of an Edge workflow to the same device. Or, said in a different way, an Edge device can only run one version of a workflow, but it can still run many workflows, just not the same version of one of them. All right, that's how you deploy and check on the status. Now, let's dig into deployments a bit. There's a certain process that happens behind the scenes when you hit deploy that's important for you to keep in mind. First and foremost, when you deploy, all connected agents will deploy. Pretty simple, right? On first connection to LoSANT, devices will always sync with the cloud. This sync will make sure the Edge devices are running all the workflows they're supposed to be running. It also syncs some other stuff like your device agent version that's being used. If your devices are not connected when you deploy, next time they connect, it will sync with the cloud and push down all the new workflows. This process is also the same if you remove a workflow. If you remove a workflow and the device is connected, it will remove immediately or sync later upon connection. Okay, since our workflow we deployed has a debug node, let's look at some debug messages. Edge workflow payloads are different from application workflows. The very first thing you may notice when you click the debug panel is that you have to choose a device. Because Edge workflows can be deployed on many different devices, we have to choose the device we would like to see messages for. Here, I'm going to choose my Edge device. After we choose a device, we can then begin to see debug messages appear. Now, let's take a look at the payload. The Edge agent has a couple different payload differences, but I would like to call out a few here. First is the is connected to LoSANT variable. This variable will let us know if the LoSANT agent is connected or not. So, in the example we used before, if you're using the BigQuery node, it wouldn't work if you're offline. So now with this variable, you can actually check the status of the Edge agent before you use the node. That way, it always works. The other part of the payload that I want to talk about is the agent environment variable. This variable includes a bunch of different details about the environment in which the agent is running. Depending on your application needs, some of this information may be very helpful. The nice thing about the docs is that in the Edge workflow section, it outlines all of the different variables on the root payload of an Edge workflow. So while we're at it, let's talk about some other Edge workflow differences. Edge workflows have their own storage nodes. I would like to call out that though one workflow could be running on many different devices, its storage is device specific. It will not be shared across devices. Also, you won't be able to see or edit these values in the cloud. Next, application globals. Globals are helpful for keys and such. While creating globals, they will get pushed down to the Edge agent, and as the Edge agent syncs, these values will sync as well. However, in the global section, you do have the option to not send to an Edge device. Other than that, I think you will find a nice experience with Edge workflows. They make it super simple to push your logic down to Edge devices. As always, the docs and forums are your best friend. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.